want to show you what is inside the July 2025 Crafters Crate. This month we are working on a project that has some potential to follow you into the fall season, even though we're still in the middle of summer. So I will show you what's in here, and then I will show you how to put it together. First and foremost, you're going to have this big piece here. There's going to be 3 wrapped pieces plus your toolbox. This big piece here that of course has our photo on it for kind of some inspiration there. And then this has 3 of the interchangeable pieces tucked in on the ladder piece that I will show you how to paint and assemble all the good stuff. There's also going to be 2 additional inserts for the ladder piece, and I'll show you what they all look like in just a second. But there's going to be 2 additional inserts that are shrink wrapped in there so that it's a little bit easier to pull apart pieces and paint kind of at your leisure if you don't want to do a big marathon painting to get all of these done at once. And then of course you are also going to have your tool bag here that has my little note that tells you where to find this video, and odds are if you're watching it, you've already found it. It has your discount code for the month. As a member, you do get 10% off any of our other DIY kits, workshops, anything else. If you need some extra craftiness in your life, you do get 10% off on that, and the code is on there. Inside your bag, you're gonna have our trusty blue paintbrushes, which are my favorite to use for all kinds of different applications. We've got plenty of these makeup wedges here that we use to pounce the paint on. You're gonna have 2 strips of paint. One of these has more of your neutrals in it. So you got 2 things of white because it seems like there's never enough white paint. A gray, a black, and then we actually have dark and light stains. So dark's gonna be in the first spot and light is gonna be in this middle one. I use both of them for part of the project, and you can mix and match whichever ones you prefer if you have preference over the 2. And then you've got a strip that's got more of your colors in it. We have an orange, 2 shades of yellow, a green, and then 2 shades of blue depending upon what style you like. I use this lighter blue, but this one's really pretty if you like kind of like a denim type look to it, and we've used that before for different things, so it's one of my favorites as well. And then, like I said, you've got all your sponges in there. You're gonna have your itty bitty glue bottle, which is surprisingly a lot of glue. I assembled this entire project and didn't even use half the glue bottle, so you should have some left over and plenty to complete your project. And last but not least, you guys are going to be the first to get our newest Olive and Oak sticker. We love these fun little stickers as things we can include in our DIY packages, our kits in store, as well as just fun things to hand out. And so this one says, "Creativity is messy and I'm very creative." This one was partially designed by Levi, my son. He got to help pick the neon colors. I had some more pastels on there, but he's like, "No, I like the bright ones, Mom." So we've got bright, fun colors. So let me show you what the project actually looks like. This is, I guess you'd say, one version of the project. It's got sunshine is my favorite color, sunflowers, and then this cute little watering can that's got flowers sticking out of it. I use this as more of my summer themed version of it. The light blues and the sunshine just makes me think of summer. I love sunflowers as a transitional, struggling with my words today, piece, just because it kind of brings you from that summer to that fall time really, really well. The bright yellows are fun for summer, but they really work well with harvest decor and other fall pieces. So they're a really good transitional piece of decor. So this is kind of our more summer themed version, but of course, if you like fall, paint them more fall, that's fine too. But the cool thing with this ladder is on the back side, you've got these little circles. You don't absolutely have to use those, you can kind of pluck them out. But we can pop these pieces out here and just kind of swap some stuff around. Let's put this guy, yeah, we'll put this one at the top. Maybe this guy in the middle. We can pop those pieces out, and now I have fall decor, and all you have to do is switch a couple little squares. Very simple, easy stuff that we can do here. These, I did mention in the letter too, that we are gonna have lots of these little inserts for all kinds of different themes that'll be available in the shop. Again, you're gonna get 10% off as a club member. So you can really keep this little ladder up all year long and do all kinds of fun stuff with it. I traditionally have it set up this way, but I was thinking it'd be really fun even to, if you have like a low shelf, maybe underneath your kitchen cabinets, this could easily be set long ways like this to go across your kitchen counter, just as a fun little something you can pop into your decorations. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into how to put all these pieces together. I promise you it's fairly simple, but I'm gonna go over to how we got, that's fine, that's got it really good. If we look sort of close on there, you can see that we've got that kind of shading in the sunflowers where it goes from the darker color on the inside to the lighter on the out. I am gonna walk you guys through how to do that too. So don't be stressed, this is gonna be a fun project, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. All right, so once you've taken the shrink wrap off, the first thing we're gonna do is kind of disassemble the ladder piece. So we've got them all separated out. So we've got 5 total inserts to paint, plus the ladder, of course. I am going to start with this Sunshine is my favorite color piece. Get some of these pieces sort of moved off of here. And I'm going to do this one with this light blue. Now when I'm painting the backgrounds, I'm going to use the flat brush and just kind of go all across the whole entire thing and fill it in. There are tons of ways you can do this. You can distress things. We're going to talk about a couple different ways. So really make this your own. I went with this bright blue, but I think that darker blue that's next to it would make for a really cool blue jean theme or like denim look. So tons of options there. You paint it however makes your heart happy. I like this one because it kind of gives a lot of room for fun stuff. All right, so let's get this all covered. I did speed this up a little bit because watching paint dry is not great fun, but you guys will get the idea. All right, all my edges. And then I'm painting my little watering can this blue color. I think the gray would be really cute too, but I don't know, I just felt with this blue. So I got that one all covered. Now I'm going to take some white and I'm going to dab my letters. This is a much easier way to make sure that your letters all get filled in and don't have a lot of goopy paint on the side versus using the paintbrush. So the sponge is my best friend. So I've got my small letters done. Now I'm going to take some of this white and I'm just going to lightly tap along the edge of a few of my pieces. This is just giving it a little bit of a highlight, a little bit of fun color, more than just kind of a flat piece. There are tons of ways to do this. This is just how I've decided to do it. And I'm trying to get all the edges just a little bit. Now, if I decide to go over a little too much and get it a little too blue, or too white rather, I can always come back in and either with just a little bit of water kind of, you know, like this, I'm blending some of it out, but I could also come back in with blue paint. What I always tell everybody is paint covers paint. I'm going to do the same with this piece, just kind of highlighting those edges. It just gives it a fun little pop. I did say paint covers paint. I should say paint covers dry paint. So if you're going to need to recover something, I definitely recommend letting it dry first. Now on this background, I am using the sponge versus the brush because it has those kind of shiplap lines scored into it and I want those to show. If I use the brush, sometimes the bristles get down into those lines and fill it in more. So I do prefer to use the sponge if there's like detail in the background that I want to be able to see. Now most of them, they just have the score lines to show me where to line things up. You can paint with a brush and still see those lines well enough, but with this one I really want them to stand out. So I'm just going to kind of do the pounce over all of them. So I'll fill that in. Now I'm going to use this bright yellow. I like the bright yellow for the summery style and just do my little sunshine letters in that bright yellow. And now we're going to talk about painting a sunflower. So I am going to start with my darker yellow from the inside and I'm just going to kind of work my way around. The centerpiece is going to get covered, so don't worry about getting it perfect. But I'm working from the inside out and just bringing that darker color a little bit out to the petals. If you want it more dark, you can do more of the dark. Even adding some stain or some of that orange will really give you that darker kind of fall sunflower, but I went for the more bright ones. So I'm just bringing this just past that kind of circle-y shape and dragging it all the way out, kind of to mid-petal point. And then I'm coming back in with that lighter yellow color and I'm just kind of layering it right on top. I didn't wait for it to dry. If they mix a little bit, that's even better. It just really gives it that blended effect. But I'm going to go through and just kind of paint that to the rest of my petal pieces. But I'm using that brighter yellow now. Now, if you prefer the darker yellow, you can totally do the dark yellow, maybe do the orange on the inside or even a stain to really get that darker sunflower effect. Like I said, I was going bright. I needed a little sunshine. Yeah, so we'll fill in all of these little tips here, get them sort of blended in there and mix it all up really good. Now I'm going to come back in with a little bit more of that dark and I'm going to work sort of the flat side of my brush so that it creates kind of those little lines. If you ever looked up close on a sunflower, sometimes that darker color is kind of almost veiny from the petals. So I'm working kind of the long side of the brush versus big wide strokes. I'm using that more flat edge to kind of just make little lines to pop out. I promise you sunflowers are not intimidating, and the way that the colors can blend together, it really makes this one a fun one to play around with, and you get a bunch of tries because there's many sunflowers on this one. So I'm just kind of blending those pieces out a little bit. Now, are there 100 ways to do this? Yes, this is just how I do it. All right, now I'm going to work on the center of my sunflower. This second pot is my light stain. I'm going to do the light stain on kind of the ring around the centerpiece, and I'm just brushing it on real light. Nothing heavy. If you want darker color or more of like a solid brown versus a stain, you could do a couple of coats of it, but I like the wood grain kind of coming through on this part because I don't know, it just gives me that sort of, you know, sunflowery, not solid color feel.
Now I am taking the darker stain on the middle piece, and I'm just kind of brushing around. Originally I was going to try to skip over these dots, and then I realized I really don't need to for the effect I'm going for. So don't mind me. I'm going to go right back over them anyway. I'm gonna fill all this in, and now I did go light on the dark, if that makes sense. I only had a little bit on my brush, and I did brush most of it off, but now I'm going to use the back side of my brush, and I'm going to dip it just into the dark stain, and I'm just kind of putting the stain where those dots are. Believe it or not, those little score lines do kind of help keep the stain in one place. It does create sort of a bubble effect that sits on top, but once it dries, it kind of flattens out. So that's how that piece will go. And it's really, like I said, it's nothing super fancy. It just pops right back there in the middle. And then there we go. It'll line up kind of like that. And now you've got a super cute sunflower. So we'll go through and do the rest of those. And now I'm going to add some detail to my shiplap piece. So again, I'm working with the stain. I'm using the light on this, and I'm just pulling from the outside edge inward. So my paint is dry. I'm just adding this to give it some color. Now my trick, and maybe there's a better way to do this too, is after I've got that stain just kind of along the edge, and I try not to make it look too uniform, I drag my finger across it like you just saw to kind of soften it a little bit, just like this. It kind of changes the way it looks and doesn't look too, I don't know, perfect. It's meant to look worn. But if you notice, there's some parts where I've got it further into the wood, some parts where it's just barely on the edge. I try not to make it look too uniform, because then it kind of throws off that, you know, rustic worn feel if it looks too uniform. Now I'm going back in along those shiplap lines and adding some of the stain really light on my brush. I mean, there's hardly anything on here, just enough to kind of darken it as if it were, you know, pieces of wood that had been worn over time, you know, paletted together, just to give it a cool effect. I kind of went for it with this one and was just playing around with all the different pieces. It was a lot of fun. Now I'm going to come along these edges here and do the same thing I did across the top and the bottom, but I will pay a little bit more attention with heavier stain closer to where those score lines are, the cracks in the wood, just because that's naturally where something would be worn a little bit heavier. So I'm adding a little heavier right here and down through all of that. Again, you don't have to do all of this. I just like playing around with it. It makes it, you know, more fun. The more details you add to it, the more fun it gets. And the more you do this, I will say that too, the more you do this, the easier it gets and the more natural it seems. All right, now I'm going to paint my pumpkin. I did just use light stain for the stem of my pumpkin, and just kind of guesstimated where to end, because that other round piece is going to go on top of it. I'm going to start by giving my whole pumpkin a coat of the the orange paint, and just kind of making sure I've got a nice filled in pumpkin to start off with, and then we're going to go back in with, I'll show you kind of two different ways we can distress this guy. So I'm going to do this part as well. Now if you want real dimension, you could also add some yellow to your orange right here and make this a totally different color so that it's lighter in the front, darker orange in the back, but what we're going to play with is going to give us kind of the same idea. So let's go in and do this. Alrighty, that looks pretty filled in, and it'll center up on there. But that looks pretty flat, so we're going to add some dimension. And there's two ways to do this. I'm going to do the easier of the two first, and then we're going to have the fun one. So this is our very flat looking pumpkin, but now if we take the sponge, I'm going to use the back side of it just because it seems natural. Oops, let's see. So we're going to grab some of that medium yellow, the darker of the two yellows, and I'm going to pounce along the edge of that, similar to how we did the blue background or the watering can with the white. And this will still give you some cool highlight if you're not wanting to play around with it a whole lot, where it just sort of gives the edge a little bit of color. And we'll dab all along this outside edge here, all the way around. Oops. There we go. And right across here. A little too much on that part, but it's okay. I'll do the same on this end. This one I swiped a little bit more than I dabbed just because I wanted it to be really light. Get it down into some of those cracks. And again, don't worry about it being perfect. It never has to be perfect. It's meant to be fun. And we'll do the same kind of over on this side, but we'll just distress those edges. Alrighty, so that added just a little bit of a highlight to it, which is cute, but I want to take it just a step further. So we're going to get a little bit of water on our brush, and I'm going to take some of that orange, and I'm going on here just so that I have kind of a wet coat of that orange paint to blend into. So you'll notice that as soon as I'm done, I'm adding a little bit more water to it. But now I grab some of that yellow. I didn't rinse my brush. It still has some orange, but I'm grabbing some of that yellow, and sort of working from one end to the other. And now I'm going to go darker orange on this side. It kind of just creates a natural highlight of the whole thing, and so I would go with the yellow side, probably closer to the top because that's where sun generally would hit a pumpkin. But now I'm going to use that other end of my brush to kind of create some little lines here, and then we're going to blend them out. So get a little bit more of that orange, and you just kind of play back and forth with it. Like I said, if you get it all done and decide, you know what, that was not where I was going for, let it dry, give yourself another coat of orange, and try again. It's part of the fun. It's part of the reason we like to do this. I've had some people who come into the shop, they will paint, if I'm trying to encourage them to try something like this and it's outside of their comfort zone, sometimes they'll paint the back side of the pieces, which won't have the score lines, but you'll get the idea. They'll paint the back side of the pieces until they kind of like what they did, and then paint the front. Totally an option too, but don't be afraid to try new things. So I'm gonna get some of this yellow and orange here on this background piece and just kind of blend it out. You don't have to be a fancy painter, and I am by far not a fancy painter, but it just gives it a little bit of detail, a little bit of mixed color. In general, when I'm painting stuff like this, I do really like to use two colors to kind of blend together, just because it just adds to it. And that's as simple as it gets. We'll mix this there. It makes it look like I knew what I was doing, but really I was just having fun. All right, so let's work on our ladder piece. This is super simple, I promise you. I'm going to use the dark stain for mine. You could easily paint it white, gray, light stain, whatever kind of goes with your decor. I went with the dark stain because I have a lot of the lighter pieces that I like to paint, so we'll go dark. All I'm doing is brushing it on. I'm kind of going across this way because that's the way the wood grain fits. You don't have to be super, super particular about this either. You could also, if you didn't want to use the brush, you could use a baby wipe, which are really handy for applying the stain. And I will tell you too, this is a water-based stain, so it's not going to smell. It's not going to have that possibility to randomly combust, and it's going to wash off your hands really, really well. So I'm going to fill all this in. Now for this big section, I'm going across the wood grain just to get the stain on there. But I am going to come back in and kind of drag it left and right so that it matches the direction of the wood grain. Maybe that comes from a mom who did a lot of woodworking growing up, but having the stain go with the grain instead of against the grain is a must in my book. We'll go across here. We're going to finish up the other side. It does take a few minutes to get it all nice and coated, and of course if you want it darker you can do more stain, or you can keep it light, totally up to you. Or like I said, you don't even have to use stain. Now I am only going to stain the face of it. I am not worried about the background piece because you're not going to really see it, so I'm just staining the face. You're welcome to paint, stain, add your little pops of color, whatever makes you happy. Now that it is dry, I am going to apply glue to the back side of this. And I'm just kind of squiggling a line down each row, and then I'll go across the middle. If you have clothespins or clamps or even just a couple of heavy books to put on top of this when you do go to glue it and press it down, it does help everything set. I don't have one handy, so we're just gonna roll with it. I have a gazillion clamps. Where they are at the moment, I'm not sure. Story of a crafter, right? I'm just gonna kind of press it down, and again, we're using wood glue. If some of it seeps out, which I did have some in the middle, you can wipe it out or let it just dry. And then your pieces can pop right into it. Like I said, you could display it this way, or turn it the more traditional ladder shape like this, and fit your pieces in there, just depending on where you want to decorate with. And that is the project, guys. Super simple. I hope you guys liked this one. I think having transitional decor is so fun, and I can't wait to see what you guys do with them. Please, please post your photos. I love seeing them.